Good morning, everyone. I am going to switch cameras so that people can see a little bit more of my face. Today's opening words are from Reverend Gretchen Haley, minister in Fort Collins, Colorado. What is going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What is going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails, as if the new zodiac, capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promises of making sense or turning out the way we had thought, as if we are not also actors in this ever unfolding story. For this hour, we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all the control or none. Here in our songs and in our silence, our stories and our sharings, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. That is courage, forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still that a new world is possible, that we are creating it already, here and now. Come, let us worship together. Our centering words this morning come from a blog. It's something to akin to a Ask Amy type article in a newspaper. The original question stated, do you pray with your family and maybe friends, hoping that sometimes someone is listening to your desperate inner voice to get answers or guidance, an epiphany in this cruel world which most of us take for granted? The author, Nick Cave, focuses on the concept of a cruel world. So I invite you to settle into your seats for our centering words. Afterwards, we'll have a moment of silence, and then Phyllis will bring us back together with music on her lyre. Words by Nick Cave. Is this world cruel? I don't think so. I think this world is indifferent, and indifference is not cruelty. What connects me to you and you to every other sentient being in the universe is that the universe simply does not care about us. It does not act with malice or desire to harm us. It is simply unaffected by our condition. If one acknowledges this state of affairs, then it sets up a situation that allows us to make a simple choice. Either we respond to the indifference of the universe with self-pity and narcissism, as if the world has in some way personally betrayed us, and live our lives in a cynical, pessimistic, and self-serving manner. Or we stand tall, set our eyes clearly upon this unfeeling universe, and love it all the same, even though, or especially because, it does not love us. The act of cosmic defiance, of subversive optimism, of unconditional and insubordinate love is the greatest act of human beauty that we can perform. To stand before this great, blank, heartless cosmic event and say, "We believe in you, we love you, we care for you." This is the definition of grace. And this is the epiphany you speak of. We create our own divinity, our own godliness, through our ferocious need. We yearn the heavens awake, and if we are quiet in prayer or in meditation, sometimes we can feel the heavens stirring, breathing our fragile and reckless love back through us. If you are like me, you have been spending much time over the last few years struggling to remember that the universe is not cruel, that it's indifferent, showing up to the battle of internal pessimism and cynical behavior. I will admit that much of this has to do with the coronavirus, a global pandemic that caught nearly every country's leaders flat-footed. But our leaders responded to the responses to the pandemic, the need to shift the way things happen and the way we create community, the way that we interact with one another, the way that we had to shift our beloved communities, also had me considering what it is this world was trying to do to us. Why are we being asked to overcome such hurdles? Why must we be stuck inside all winter long? And then just as the weather starts to turn beautiful and the restrictions begin to lift, we are slammed with climate disaster after climate disaster. Why is it that as people have struggled to stay employed, have struggled to continue to pay bills and to make ends meet, and struggled to stay healthy and manage their mental health, is it that the universe throws sky-high housing costs at us, increases the cost of gas, the cost of milk, the cost of fruit? Why is it that a tsunami hits the Philippines, wildfires decimate a city, a ship turning around gets stuck in a canal, and an atmospheric river rips apart the artery of our supply lines? Cruel world, why do you put us through all of this? I know of many people who have stopped consuming news during this time, discontinuing their newspaper subscriptions, deleting favorite podcasts from their queue, and even Facebook friends, unsubscribing to specific blogs and news channels, removing themselves from the cruelties of life, removing themselves from the challenges because they are challenged enough to get through their own day-to-day hurdles, the workload that is over-demanding, or the work that is no longer necessary, which then requires them to redefine themselves. The family member who is numbing out life because their own personal pain is too much to handle. I, perhaps, unfortunately, have done the opposite. I've increased my news consumption, listening to multiple different points of view, trying to make sense of everything that is happening, and how to overcome it all, how to win over the good graces of the universe. And then I remember that I don't believe that the universe is cruel. I don't believe that there is some infinite being that creates justice or vengeance. I don't believe that there is a thing that has the capacity to be cruel. I believe that we make the world that we live in. I believe that our relationships hold us and allow us to create the universe. I believe, like Nick Cave stated, that we are responsible for the acts of defiance or the acts of love. And, it can be hard to hold one another in that belief. As I was researching and contemplating this week's sermon, I came across these words by my colleague, Reverend Victoria Stafford, who's a minister in Minnesota. You have to lift up thine eyes, get yourself to a window every day, at least once a day. Lift up your eyes to the hills, or the prairie, or the river, or the sun, or the rain, or a friend, a book, or a song, a prayer, or your God, whatever will remind you rightly who you are and whose you are and how wondrously made. You have to practice this every day because faith, like memory, falters. Faith is not a thing you have, a thing you can cling to and claim once and for all. Faith is a thing that you do. Sustaining it is more like replenishing the level of vitamin C in your body or muscle mass. You do it every day. Reverend Stafford continues to say, we like to think we know things, and to some extent we do. Science gives us clues, little lily pads of data to hold our weight as we cross the deep and roiling waters of this life. We like to think we know a lot, but I'm telling you, it takes only one tsunami wiping out an island, one hurricane. It takes only one senseless war or one senseless death. It takes only one horrific diagnosis out of the blue, only one betrayal, one loss, one drop of sadness or self-doubt that will not dissipate. I'm telling you, it takes just one thing to make you unknow everything you know. And then, what do we go on? I'm talking about what holds you through the night. And yet, on the other side, Let's hasten to admit and remember and confirm on the other side you think you know things, but I'm telling you, it takes only one new baby, damp and purple, wriggling in your trembling hands, screaming its first moments of life for air and milk and love, and you're undone. It turns out you don't know a thing about where babies come from. It takes only one sunrise sometimes, one golden maple tree aflame in October's rare and stunning light, one reprieve, one heartfelt apology that you did not expect, one miracle among the many that fall out of the sky and into our hands every day. It takes just one, or maybe two of those, to make you unknow everything you thought you knew about cynicism and despair. And then, what do you go on? Faith holds open possibility. It bridges us over when the water is roiling and wide. Faith shakes us awake from our complacency and anchors us in what we know we love, but had momentarily forgotten. And so I sit and I ponder. What are the pieces of my life that I have been able to practice, that I have come back to day after day to allow myself to practice and build up my faith muscle? What are the pieces of work that I can return to again and again that will help hold me through the night? Breathing, listening to my breath, witnessing the rising and falling of my chest, and the feel of the cool air as it hits the back of my throat. Kissing my dog's cold, wet, salty nose, and throwing the ball for him to chase. Music, dancing in my kitchen or living room, singing hymns to Adam. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? I've spent time knitting and watching comedy, enjoying the possibility of laughter. I have snuggled under weighted blankets, and I've soothed my soul with copious amounts of sugar. And I've spent hours scrolling through videos and pictures and posts, not really consuming any of it. One piece that I keep trying to remind myself is that I have forgotten over and over in this time alone that faith is not a solitary act. Though I have known it to be private and intimate, though I have tried to keep it to myself, faith is actually communal. And if we're lucky, it's contagious. It is present when we gather, when we reach out, when we connect across great distances, and when we connect here in this room and on these screens. It is present when we light candles together. It is present when we sing together. It is present when we sway together. When I can't continue on by myself, I am propped up by the faith of others, of those around me. Faith is what our hands hold all together when none of us is strong enough to hold it on our own. In our time for all ages this morning, we witnessed a group of children fall back on a practice that they were taught to make covenants. and to practice their behavior and interactions with one another. The adults got caught up in the logistics, in the policy making, and in the calling of regional support. They got lost in the structure of our community rather than falling into the practices of community. And I believe that is what I have been struggling with, creating structures and scaffolding, attempting to hold faith by myself, when what I really needed to do was lean into community, to witness that I am not holding it, holding the weight of the cruelty of the world alone, but leaning into covenants that we create together. Reverend Josh Paywalek, which is a UU minister in Manchester, Connecticut, states it this way: I am a person of faith. There are truths on which I can rely. I know my fear will burn away. Not because I believe something for which I have no evidence, but precisely because there have been times when I have been fearful and vulnerable and weak, and because there have been times when I have witnessed others, including many of you, confronting challenges far greater than any I have ever confronted, and they and you have been fearful and vulnerable and weak, and in the act of acknowledging and accepting my fear, my vulnerability, my weakness, and in their act and in your act of acknowledging and accepting fear, vulnerability, and weakness, somehow, always, a next step emerges. A path emerges. We can go on. And in beginning to move along that path, fear burns away. This is my experience, and I trust it. And so I ask you, in our reconnecting, in our regathering today, in this sanctuary and virtually, through all of the screens for the last several months and 2 years, what are the things that are helping you to renew your faith? That are the pieces of your faith that you are being reminded to lean into, to reconnect to. Thank you. And our benediction words are A First Step Faith by Reverend Scott Taylor. Go with faith, not the kind that is called to move mountains, but the quieter sort that calls us to take the first step, even when the whole staircase sits beyond our view. And as we stride toward the unseen, may we notice that the way unfolds only as we risk walking it. And may we remember and trust that none of these steps are ones we take alone. Amen.